Hello, this is Sarah Bell, your Clear Writing Consultant, and today's presentation is about collaborative writing, which is something that you will be doing here for the rest of your DPAs this semester. Today what we hope to accomplish is just to help you identify some ways that you can organize writing as a team. Also some strategies that can help you make sure that team writing goes smoothly. And then we're going to take a look at one of the most difficult parts of writing as a team, which is giving constructive feedback to one another. So there are kind of three ways that you can organize yourselves when you are trying to put together a collaborative writing project. And the first is interactive writing, which is just where somebody is either elected or chooses to go ahead and take a stab at drafting the document and then probably sending it out and having everybody discuss it and give feedback and make changes, corrections, additions, etc., etc. This is one of the most common forms of collaborative writing. Sometimes it's easier to talk about something already on the page, so if you have somebody willing to do it, this is one way to approach a collaborative writing assignment. The second way is cooperative writing, and in my experience this is how a lot of students tackle collaborative writing assignments in school, at least. That's where you kind of divide up the parts of the project and assign them to individuals in the team. Remember that even if you are off creating your part of the document, you still want to keep in communication with your team members. The last kind of collaborative writing is called co-authoring, and this is where you literally meet together and start drafting, hammering out that document together. Sometimes this can take a lot of time, so it's not one that people use a lot, but if you have a certain dynamic in your team and you work really well together, that might be a way to consider working on your project. So there are some things to watch out for with each of these. In the interactive style, where you have a person who is primarily responsible for the writing, you want to make sure that that person can take input, that they aren't really emotionally attached to that document, and that they can take input and incorporate input. You also want to make sure that that team is willing to provide the input to that writer and to really help them out. So you've really got to have an kind of open discussion back and forth to make sure that that's successful. In the cooperative style, everybody goes off and kind of writes their part, but when you bring all of those pieces back together, you don't want to have a Frankenstein monster, so you want to make sure that somebody is going through and kind of editing that document for coherence and consistency, and you want to make sure that you've got a file management strategy so that you're not overwriting parts of each other's documents, so on and so forth. With the co-authoring strategy, really this depends on kind of the team dynamics, and one of the things to be on the lookout for is that it can take a lot of time. Okay, in order to make things go smoothly, this is kind of sort of no-brainer advice, but here are some things to watch out for. Establishing a timeline, so make sure that you remember that writing is a process and you're going to want to draft and revise and draft and revise way before you get to that proofreading stage. So it's a little bit different than maybe when we have to write something ourselves and we kind of put it off till the last minute. As a collaborative writing exercise, you need to make sure that you've accounted for enough time to fit all of that cycle in. You want to agree on the format, especially if you're kind of doing that divide and conquer style where everybody's going and taking ownership of a piece and then bringing those back together. You want to make sure that everybody's kind of sticking more or less to the same format, so you don't have to spend a lot of time reformatting. Always keep in communication with your team members. Make sure that no matter which of these strategies you use, that everybody's taking a look at that final, next to final document, and that you're revising thoughtfully as a team. You know, don't think that you have to keep your feedback for kind of the end editing stage. You can always be communicating and asking for feedback at any stage of the writing process. Okay, so we know that some of the things that make a good team are communication and cooperation, collaboration, coordination, compromise, all those C words. And then I'm going to add to that list for collaborative writing that also giving and accepting constructive criticism is important. And this is kind of difficult. A lot of times, you know, maybe we can identify some things that don't seem exactly how we want them in the document, but maybe we don't know how to fix it. We don't exactly know how to explain what's wrong with it. And so what I want to do is provide you with a way to maybe think about giving some of that constructive criticism or feedback to your team members. And to do that, I want to review the 3 laws that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. We talked about them in terms of writing. So how can we think of audience and the signal-to-noise ratio and the effective redundancy when we are sitting down as writers? But you can also turn them around and think of them as a reader of your teammates' writing, or the writing that the group is producing. So in other words, you can think about audience, and as you're looking through that document, say, what questions do I have? If I have questions, then certainly the audience would have questions. And maybe you are able also to anticipate questions that another audience might have for that document that the person didn't have time to think about when they were writing. So one of the ways to give constructive feedback is to look through that document and think about the questions that you have as the reader or the audience. Another way, and this is one that we're always sort of looking for, is identifying things that are incorrect. So, you know, we think when we're giving feedback on writing that we're always looking for grammar and punctuation and that kind of thing. But you can also identify things that are unclear for your teammates, and you don't necessarily have to know exactly how to fix all of those. You don't have to be a grammar expert. You don't have to be a wordsmith, but you can just highlight things that seem a little unclear, particular sentences, phrases, maybe words that are vague, and say, hey, you know what, this just doesn't seem clear to me. And then have the team member or somebody else on the team be able to look at it and kind of brainstorm about how you could make that more clear. In terms of effective redundancy, if you remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about that as being really key in terms of organizing documents. And so as a reader, as a member of the team, you can look through your team members' work and say, hey, did I get lost at any point in this document? Do I need more detail? These kinds of things are questions that you ask yourself as a reader, and if you are willing to point them out, then the group can come together and fix them.